Hello and welcome to Herd. Herd is an inclusive, affirming, egalitarian community where we are celebrating the voices of all people and providing a space for their stories to be heard. I'm your host, Kevin. You'll find us at www.herd.love with a link to all of our channels. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment for all the latest updates on all of our shows. I hope whoever you are, wherever you find yourself on the journey of faith, no faith, or somewhere in between, you will find something here that speaks to you. If you have any comments, questions, or you'd like to be on a future show or ideas for a future show, please email us at hello@herd.love. Hello@herd.love. Anyway, thank you for being with us today. I'm so happy to have my friend who grew up on the same street as me, Rebecca Trammel.
Thanks for having me.
And let's not forget that you have like the perfect attendance award, I think.
Probably did.
Yeah, I think you and Josh, I don't know about Harold, I remember y'all getting the perfect attendance award and in school. I'm like, man, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, probably because my mom was like, please get out of the house. You are not allowed to stay home.
Yeah, get out of here. Yeah, I have some funny memories of us growing up. Becky, I call her Becky, but she lived like 2 blocks down the road. And I remember one time, I remember your trampoline was buried in the ground.
It was.
Yeah.
It's because my dad was afraid that we would fall off.
Yeah, smart. A man ahead of his time.
He wanted to save some money on broken arms.
Yeah, amen. And I remember one time there was a patch of woods across from my house. And this is the 80s, and we were all convinced that there were Satanists doing rituals in the woods. I mean,
that is so true.
Yeah. If you grew up in the 80s, there was like it was either Satanism or you were going to get kidnapped. Like we were all convinced of that. So
that is so true. Oh my God.
And then my other really funny memory is I remember being at a middle school dance, and Becky's like maybe 2 or 3 years older than me. Maybe more, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But my point is I was in middle school and she was working for Domino's, and we're like all dancing as middle schoolers and everything. And here comes Becky Trammel in the dance hall holding pizzas over her head, just dancing to the music. I'm like, hey, I like this.
I was like, this is the best job ever.
Yeah.
All the pizza I can eat and I get to dance. This is great.
And I felt like working at that Domino's was like a rites of passage for your class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Everybody worked there.
Yes. So what I love about Becky for so many reasons is that as a person of color, your dad is African-American, your mother was Puerto Rican, right?
And Ashkenazi.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and your mother passed away 2 or 3 years ago?
6.
6? Wow. That was fast.
I know.
That was honestly like a life-changing funeral, like hearing her story. I want to do an episode just to talk about her because my takeaway is that she was a bridge to the local religious community and secular or non-religious community, whatever you want to call it. And her lifestyle represented that bridge. And I'm sure being a person of color in the South, she had many convictions that she just kind of kept her mouth closed and just let her life lead by example. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's not the one. She wasn't going to talk about it. She's going to be about it.
Yes. And that's exactly who you are. So, so in many ways, your mother's, her spirit lives in you. I think, is that fair? Like, I don't like putting words in.
No, you're absolutely right.
And so, you started, upon her passing, you started Champions for Compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about that and the other programs you have going on.
So, 2 days after my mom passed away of ovarian cancer, my brothers and my dad and I were sitting in my brother's man cave, and they call it the NC stateroom. And we were supposed to be planning her funeral. And this was the first time that we'd sat down together as a family since she had passed away. And instead of planning her funeral, we started talking about carrying on her legacy because that was to us, that was more important. And it was like we came into the room kind of somber,
Mm-hmm.
but when we started talking about Ruthie Trammel's Champions for Compassion, which we named in that moment, and we started talking about how we were going to remove obstacles to substance abuse recovery. We were going to remove the stigma of mental illness and people who are struggling with substance use disorder. We were going to promote professional development and restore hope. In that moment, it was like everything changed. The air changed. We were excited. We didn't even get around to talk about her funeral. Like, that wasn't even like, forget about that. We'll get to that later. But we decided right then and there that we established our mission statement. We looked it up online. Like, is Champions for Compassion taken? Well, it is now. And we just kind of took it from there. And
I love it.
We've been giving away bicycles and bus passes. And when we give away a bicycle, we give them a U-lock, a helmet, and lights, because you have to have all of those things to safely ride a bicycle. So we want this to be their vehicle until they get to just another place in life. Because, if the judge takes your keys, it doesn't mean that you don't have to still get places.
Mm-hmm.
And good luck on our buses. That's another topic.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing that, and we started a jewelry line so that people can talk about challenging things in a more beautiful way. And it's kind of like disrupting that conversation, because a lot of times people associate that with something negative, like mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
or substance use. But when it shows up in a high, at a trade show, or if it shows up in, unlikely places, we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about it.
That's
What
yeah.
I've been doing with that.
And substance abuse, it's white collar just as much as it's blue collar. It's rich, it's poor, it's across the spectrum.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, treatment, I think, is not so universal.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it does. And I think, right now it's getting a lot more attention because it is hitting a different demographic. But, people have pain. And I think when I saw that Wilmington, I know it was a few years ago that we were cited as having being basically the epicenter of the opioid crisis, like #1 in the country. It just told me that Wilmington is a place with a lot of people who are in a lot of pain, because
Mm-hmm.
people who are not in pain don't need opioids.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's physical or emotional pain, people are in pain, and they're trying to escape. So I think that's like the real issue that we should be addressing. Why are people in so much pain?
Oh, wow. Okay. So me and Becky have kind of run in similar circles as we've grown up, and a lot of those are like similar churches and things, and we end up always kind of circling the wagons around some of these topics and things. And so what I love about what you are doing right now in your life is you definitely have your finger on the pulse of the local politics and the local Christian communities and the local needs for what we need in Wilmington. And whenever we see the news, it seems very overwhelming, and it seems like, what can I do to help? And I think what is really beautiful about what Becky is doing is that she's saying, you can help, and you can help locally. Like, we might not be able to change the world. We might not change America, but we can change Wilmington. We can change New Hanover County. We can change downtown, and we can start the conversations that need to be had to start this transformative process. And you always come across to me as such a gracious, loving, but at the same time, assertive soul. And so can you kind of speak to that and tell us? I know you have Champions for Compassion, and that works alongside the Coastal Horizons, which is a rehab program that your mom helped start, right?
Right. And so we support Coastal Horizons, and we support community recovery courts.
Okay.
With our transportation assistance programs.
And then, okay, but besides that, when it comes to more, I guess, social justice, you have
community conversations.
Community conversations. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That I started that, and that our fiscal agent for that is Voyage, or the Blue Ribbon Commission. So we kind of linked arms with that, and so I don't have a separate 501c3 for that. I partner with them and get support that way. We, it was 2018, and a friend of mine went to Facebook right after her daughter's holiday party at school and said, pinned her location and said, when your daughter is the only one who doesn't receive a Christmas gift from her teacher, hashtag only Black kid in the class.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, really? Well, the whole town was like, I mean, they were ready to tar and feather her. Like, where is this teacher? And, you know, it was like a collective, oh, hell no, she didn't, you know? And so I was like, there's all this angst, there's all this outrage. And I was like, what are we going to do about that? So I said, guys, this is what we do tomorrow. I reached out to the mom. I got more of the story. And I mean, I just knew the energy had to go somewhere. And I asked her, what does your daughter like? She likes teddy bears. I mean, she's in first grade. She was 7. She likes teddy bears. She likes books, coloring. I mean, really little stuff, princesses. And anyway, so I put on Facebook, I said, tomorrow, if you have time, please go by Walmart and get a little $10 gift.
Yeah.
She likes these following things. She likes to read. And please bring that to the receptionist desk and say that it is for Princess T, first grade.
I think I know where this is going.
Parade all day long. Oh my God. They had to call the mom at lunchtime and say, you got to pick her up today and you need to bring a big car because the office is full of gifts. Not only, so when the principal came, when the mom came, the principal had to take a cart to take to her van to put these gifts in the car. Then I roll up, I've got 2 arms full, like both arms like shopping bags and hands full of gifts to bring her as well. Like we packed the back of that mom's van. And this girl is like, wow, you know? But the first day, like right after it happened, she was like, oh, I don't get something, you know? She actually confronted her teacher. She went to her teacher and was like, you know, do you have a gift for me? And she says, no, I must have forgot, but I could bring yours tomorrow. And so
did the mom confront the teacher? I mean, did she really forget?
No, she didn't forget. Come on. Okay. These were handmade gifts.
Oh,
these are gifts with their names on them.
Oh,
and the teacher actually called every single child to the front of the room to get their present. Jesus. And in all of that time, you didn't see this girl on the front row with her mother standing beside her, never even acknowledged her presence. And you expect me and everybody else in this town to believe that was a mistake? No, that's called invisibility, a complex or a phenomenon that actually impacts girls of color. Case in point. You didn't mean to do it, but you don't have to.
And what side of what side of town was it on?
It was in a predominantly white school.
Anyway, that story is perfect. That story signifies you didn't make the teacher do anything, although you very well could have and taken her to court and things. You just said, hey, listen, community, this is the injustice. What are we going to do about it? And I bet every other kid was so jealous they didn't get the 5,000 gifts.
They're like, man, can you forget me next year?
Yeah. I don't want this handmade shit.
Yeah, like, I mean, the girl got like Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, her birthday, everything, every day, one day. Wow. Like, I mean, I took a picture of her. I bought a tiara for her from Claire's, and somebody asked me like, oh, do you have a daughter who's in a pageant? And I was like, no, but there's a little girl who needs to feel like a princess. And these are like the people who were working at the stores, and they were like, well, what happened? And I told them, and they were like, oh no. They're like, tell her to come over here today. Yeah. And if she doesn't have her ears pierced, we're going to pierce her ears. When she got there, they had a whole like book bag full of little tweeny stuff for her, like little kid stuff, like whatever 7-year-olds like. Yeah. I mean, it was really, really cool how the whole city came together, and it got shared a million times. And, you know, we asked New Hanover County Schools for a meeting with the board because, you know, the parents were like, you know, this really just doesn't need to happen to another kid, and that's all we want. We just want to make sure that other kids don't experience what our daughter experienced. And they stonewalled them. They just ignored them. Like, no, we don't have to talk to you. you've had enough. We've done enough. And I was like,
The
no.
principal didn't call the teacher out.
Oh no, they did. That was the other side. I will say this, like I called up some of my friends, or one of my friends who was on the board, and I said, this is serious and you need to deal with it. She was angry. She was mad. So immediately the superintendent got involved and called the principal. The principal called the teacher and confirmed the story. And the teacher was like, yeah, I did that, but I'm going to make it right tomorrow. She was like, what? So she called, the principal was apologizing immediately.
Yeah.
This is the thing. There's intent and then there's impact.
Okay.
And then there's apologies, and then there is this willingness to make it right. And when the parent says, this is what would make it right, we just want to be heard because our daughter wasn't seen.
Heard.
And you still say, no, we don't want to hear you. Your apology means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. So I was like, all right, so you didn't want to hear her. Well, you're going to hear from me.
Oh God, she did the wrong thing then. Why is this so hard for leaderships, whether it's the church or in politics? Why is it so hard for them to understand people just want to be heard? I was talking to a girl recently that had that she doesn't live here. She had a really bad situation at a huge church, and she was talking about, all I want is an apology. All I want is to hear them say from the pulpit, we messed up. And that's all she wants. And I don't understand why it's so hard. When you validate a person's voice and you say, I hear you, we might not agree with 100%, but I hear you and I want you to know that we're sorry and we're going to work to make it better. Why is that so difficult?
Because people would rather be right. And people that have always been heard and always been seen don't want to share that spotlight.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
There's a relinquishing of power in that moment. And there's a humility. Well, okay. So you talk to me about the school board and what you were trying to do recently with the budgets and you go to all the city council meetings, right? Or a lot of them.
Actually, I went to my first city council meeting Tuesday night. But I was going to all of the school board meetings because we have a major problem in our schools, major. And gratefully, after I started, from the situation that happened with the family that I was describing, we started a group called Community Conversations, and we started fighting for equity and excellence in New Hanover County schools, specifically as it relates to the Black and brown child, because the discrimination stats are horrific. And the schools knew they couldn't fight that. They knew that they were wrong, and gratefully, within a few months, from the mid of January to mid-March, they recognized a problem of practice and began to put resolutions in place to address implicit bias and cultural competency, and identified areas of discrimination that they were supposed to be tackling, which honestly, I don't really know how they're doing it right now. We got a commitment statement that they were going to, but I'm not exactly sure how they are doing that or where we're at with that, because I've asked several times and not gotten a clear answer. I would say that some things began to change there. We brought in, the schools brought in Racial Equity Institute, and not just for the schools, but for the community, and then asked the community to partner in sponsoring more of the groundwater seminars, because their premise was, okay, you're right, we have messed up, we have a problem of practice, but New Hanover County Schools is a racist institution because racism is in New Hanover County, and we're not the only ones who are racist, or we're not the only ones who have a problem with discrimination, and they're right. So I've seen the needle move somewhat on that, but on December 3rd, they basically dug in their heels again and said, we are going to have segregated schools, and we don't care if they're equal or not. Okay. So they're separate and unequal.
You mean segregated by how they draw the lines?
Basically, they kept the neighborhood school model, which we know is because our neighborhoods are segregated. Of course, our schools are segregated. And there was no real attempt to balance that at all. Even though they said there was. Oh, my goodness. They hired a consultant who called Black people Africans, not African Americans, not Black people.
Oh,
Africans.
Just, so, and also the schools get their funding by the neighborhoods that surround them, right? It's not
I
like,
believe so.
it's not like the county gets like $1 million and says, here, 100, 100, 100, 100. It's like,
Hmm.
the way I understand it is property taxes for the surrounding areas. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's very odd. I don't
It's
get it.
called private schools. They have created private schools with public dollars, and they believe that they have the right to that because they worked hard for their money. Never mind the fact that they've exploited labor for centuries, and they're making interest off of blood money. That has nothing to do with it, or the fact that Black people couldn't even own property until like what,
Hmm.
the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw the best video yesterday. And I got to watch it again. It's the guy. It's Holy Post, the guy that made Veggie Tales, and he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about he hits it purely from like just strictly information, and he talks about the redlining. He talks about the GI Bill. He talks about the federal housing, and anyway, so give us an example of this inequity, because I think a lot of times people get caught up in the verbiage and they're like, well, prove it. And I remember you were telling me recently about, you gave the best example. I think the stories that you just told me, I think they're so impactful. I don't think you have to have the best speech in the world. I think a story like that is what goes straight to the heart. And then you were telling me a story. You were like, imagine this kid who's in a lower income housing, and his parents work all day. He doesn't have access to a laptop. He doesn't have access to broadband internet. And so whenever his teacher says, hey, I need you to turn in this paper, he's using, like, let's say his mom's phone.
Yes.
And then I'm imagining that when he turns it in, the teacher says, so and so, this you really messed up, and almost like shames him in front of the class. And little does the teacher know how hard that person worked on that paper, late at night on
Mm-hmm.
the phone whenever the mom got home. I'm just imagining that situation, and it just shows the inequity. But anyway, you were fighting to get everyone laptops for impoverished
So
communities.
that's the new thing that I want to work on, and I'm calling it tech gap.
Okay.
And like right now is the right time to address it. You know, um, the schools knew that they had to do something because we had to go to online school, and not
Hmm.
everybody has a device, and so they were trying to make sure that every household at least had a device at home. Um, and so right now we have we have an idea of who has and who does not have. And so they got loaners. Well, I think that they need keepers. And I think every child should have a laptop or some sort of device to do their homework on, because I can tell you right now, it would have been a problem. You know that I have two brothers,
Yeah.
and we are only, between all of us, we're only 4 years apart.
Hmm.
And so we are kind of, if I had to have an assignment done and my brother had
Yes.
to have an assignment done, who's going to have the laptop to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? I feel like we need to, now's the time to make it so that every kid has a fair shot, at least with that. Right now, we still don't have like accessibility to the internet for all of the students in New Hanover County. And it's been how many months? We're still working on that. And what I know that AT&T has modems that can be bought for $50,
Hmm.
and they have a program that is like, I don't know, I think it's either $5 or $10 a month. If we could get those, routers, I don't even know what you call those things. So those
Yeah. No, I
devices,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, you get those devices in the house, you get them a laptop, and then they have, they can, if they're on Snap, they can get like reduced, like a good deal on their internet. That would solve a lot of problems. That would open up accessibility. Right now in New Hanover County, we have marginalized and isolated communities of color and poor people. We have a bus system that hardly works. We have food deserts. We have internet deserts. Like, they're accessible, we've cut them off. There are people who have done their very best to make sure that those neighborhoods are divested. I saw at the city council meeting just this past week. I went because I was trying to get some law enforcement reform before they passed the budget, and we were unsuccessful. But I tell you what did get funding: a river walk. I tell you what did
Hmm.
get funding: Muni.
Oh yeah, the local golf course owned by the city. What were you going for with the budget? You were trying to reallocate the police budget?
Yeah. So we wanted to and it was kind of like a knee-jerk thing, because in the last couple of months, we've seen all across the country a reaction to our criminal injustice system, because justice is for sale, and justice is not blind in this country. And anybody who says otherwise has not done their homework. Just like you were saying, well, what are the stats on the schools? Well, we have 6 schools in our county that are failing. All of them are within city limits, and all of them are predominantly Black. For this case with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Mr. George Floyd, one thing was in common. It was white aggressors against Black victims. Yes, I can use the word Black victims. That sometimes you're victimized, sometimes you are terrorized, and if that is terrorism. Somebody busts in your door, in the middle of the night. You don't know who they are. And I mean, how come stand your ground doesn't apply to him? Because he's in jail. The guy that actually shot back at the police officer who came in plain clothes, busting in their house in the middle of the night, they took, as Breonna Taylor died, they took that man to jail.
Oh, wow.
George Zimmerman didn't go to jail.
Yeah.
Those, clowns in Georgia who shot Ahmaud Arbery, they didn't go to jail for a long time. And the only reason why they did is because the video surfaced. And the only reason why the video surfaced was because the person who took the video thought that he fought back. He should be dead. Are you serious? That is why that came out. Yeah. And so they're so surprised that the country would actually believe Black people were right.
The gentleman, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but the gentleman that just was killed at the Wendy's.
George Floyd?
No, in Georgia.
Oh, Ahmaud Arbery.
No.
Yes.
At the Wendy's.
See, you know what? So many Black people have died. You can't even keep up. It's like,
exactly. Yes, it was like 2 nights ago. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, Wendy's.
Yes, at the Wendy's. But my point is, he grabbed the taser, which of course was a bad decision. But how many episodes of Cops have you seen with white cops chasing some white dude across town? I mean, they call that good TV because the whole thing is they're chasing. And I'm like, it's so odd to me. I don't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like last night. Somebody on my Facebook page, because I got a lot of trolls. They were talking about they couldn't understand, it was like a comparison between other countries and our country, and how many people get killed by the police in our country. And they're like, well, and the post was basically saying it doesn't happen in Finland, it does not happen in Germany, it does not happen in other places where they actually make their officers go to school for 3 years before they give them a gun and a badge, but in our country there's a lot of that. And she was like, well, in those countries, are the people armed? She didn't even bother to find out if they're armed or not. It was my job to defend it. I'm like, hold on a second. The burden of proof is actually on you. You're questioning it. And let me tell you something. There's people could just as easily say, maybe we shouldn't be armed. Or and by the way, being armed or not has nothing to do with whether you're shot. It has everything to do with whether you're Black or not.
Yeah. So what do you think about these ideas that they're starting to talk about dismantling the police departments and create some kind of like social worker type?
Yeah, so in Wilmington, there was a group of people, and we came up with some recommended courses of action, things that we'd like to see happen in our police department here. That doesn't include the New Hanover County Sheriff's Department, because we're going to make some asks of them as well. But I think a lot of people are toying with something that has long been called defund, but that's not really a great name for it. Really,
Yeah.
it's a reallocation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reallocation. It's asking police officers to be police officers and allowing social workers to be social workers. And I don't see it as a divestment, really. It's a reinvestment. It is a interdisciplinary approach to public safety. So everybody gets to do what they're good at. I'm not a substance abuse counselor. My mom was. So I'm not necessarily the best person to be able to give advice to a person who I just Narcan, because I was an EMT.
Yeah.
So I'm the best person to give somebody Narcan.
Yeah.
I'm not the best person to tell somebody, this is what you need to do next to get out of your drug addiction. And that's something that that they've since addressed by Mobile Crisis, and they began to address that as I was getting out of EMS. But we really have identified the need for an interdisciplinary approach, but we need to take more steps towards that happening. And put it less on our police officers. Like, a police officer does not need to be the one responding to people who are, homeless or have mental health issues. Maybe they go and secure the scene to make sure that the social worker is safe.
Yeah.
But really, a social worker or a mental health practitioner is the right person for that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever you call the EMS, you're not worried that they might kill you. You know they're coming to help.
Well, some people know that.
Some people, yeah.
And some people don't see you coming as help. They're saying like, I'm not the one who thought I needed help.
Yeah, I hear you.
Somebody else thought I needed help.
Yeah, that's true. I'll give you that.
I've had people go crazy. But I have also had one time in the back of my truck, there was a guy who was aware that he was experiencing like a psychotic break. He actually had that awareness, and he's like, I am seeing people and I am hearing things, and I know that it's not real, but it feels very, very real. And he started talking about his family history, and he goes, I think this is happening to me. But he really was trying to he was able to articulate it, but he kept calling the police because he thought people were in the backyard. But he's like, I don't think they really are. And so I remember, feeling so sad for this man and realizing how scared he must be and how much pain he was in, realizing that he feels like he's losing his mind. And thankfully, I had a social worker for a mom. So I had, I'm kind of equal parts EMT, equal parts social worker, not like an ace at either. But, I was able to make some decisions. Like I went to the hospital and, they had like a scary movie on when we rolled into the B pod, and like behavioral pod.
Yeah.
And somebody had asked for them to play Halloween. Meanwhile, my patient is seeing people that aren't really there.
Yeah.
So I go over to the nurse's desk and I said, hey, that's not a good idea right now.
So that took a compassionate heart, and that's where the human element comes into play, because there's some things you just can't teach in school, I'm assuming. Do they teach you compassion? I mean, compassion is what shows up to the Wendy's and says, hey man, I know you've had too much to drink. You can't be in the car. Let's get you a burger. Let's go inside. Let's de-escalate the situation. And I don't know, I'm not in law enforcement, and I know I know it's way more complicated than the way I'm explaining it, but I'm just saying, when you come into a situation with compassion, and you say, I want to preserve life. I want to save life. I want to make this better. I want to create safety. I want to make this whole. Doesn't that change the whole situation?
Yeah, I think that it really, a lot of it is in the training. And that was one of the things that I was asking for specifically, was that instead of investing in militarized toys, how about we invest in transformative training?
Wow.
Why don't we do that instead of like militarizing, creating an us versus them, civilian versus police officer, complex? Why don't we train our officers to see us as neighbors, because we're non-combatants? When people call you, it's because they need help. And people, like, especially people with mental illness, have been killed by police, white and black. Autism too, like people with autism, because like, I feel like, we've only given like some of the officers do have like an innate compassion, but some of them don't. And we've given them very little to work with other than force. And I'm asking for to train our police officers for strength, not force. And that does involve compassion. And it does involve, saying, okay, so why don't we just let the officer make sure that everybody stays safe on the scene, but bring in a professional that is really good at de-escalation. Not every officer is trained for that.
That would take a lot of training. I mean, I don't think we
Yeah.
could necessarily expect that from officers. I mean, they're trained that, is this a threat? How do I respond to the threat? And this is how
Neutralize it.
Yes, neutralize, eliminate the threat. I mean, even with the talks of the guy at Wendy's, it was, he used his service weapon. It wasn't, he shot him. It was, he used his service weapon. So you use this language to remove the humanity from the situation, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's in the training, like it is in the things that, are steeped into the culture, I mean, that's like, and that is why people are saying it's time to just dismantle it and start again. The roots of the police force was to keep slaves in control. And that is an ugly fact, but it's true. Mm-hmm. And we see that tree has roots that have borne fruit. And we probably just need to, in some cases, we're going to have to start over. Like I would say that, there's been police departments that have really fired everybody and made them reapply. That might have to happen. I think that there are some police departments that do better than others. So like, I don't think that that's like every department in America has to do that. Mm-hmm. But where we see that there are real tensions and there's really reason to believe that the police force isn't seen as officers of the peace, then more as a threat to the community, and people really perceive them as a threat and they have real justified reasons why, then yeah, we probably need to consider a change of leadership. Just like any company, when you have a failing company, you bring in a new CEO, things change. Yeah. And that's probably what needs to happen here.
Well, yeah, there's this, there's like this spiritual principle, or this of like the way, there's this element of like, this is the way it's always been done. And we trust the systems that are in place. And then someone comes along and they say, no, let's create space. I'm not making a judgment call. I'm saying, let's just create space. Let's dive into here. Let's look into these possibilities. And so I think it's so easy in our world, especially tech, with social media and stuff, to just, it's like either or, 0-1. And it's like, let me make a decision, or, but there's so much space. And in the space is where you have the conversation. That's where humanity resides. That's, I was saying the other day on a show I'm going to be putting live soon, is like the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament. The presence existed between these two ends. Yes. And so it's in the tension, it's in the dissonance that we find ourselves. And so, I always like to kind of keep my eyes on the local Christian scene, because that's kind of where I was born and come from. And it's a lot of, and I understand a lot of that, but I also see the impact of that on our local politics, our local culture. It's very common at some of these Southern white evangelical churches to see big trucks parked outside, during Sunday services, which is totally fine. I don't have a truck, but it looks fun. But a lot of times I get cut off in traffic by the big trucks. And a lot of times the big trucks have a big Trump sticker on the back. And we recently had a community rally in our neighborhood with our neighbors who are Hispanic and a few other neighbors. And we made some great friends. And we kind of found out where our neighborhood is. And we had people wave, we had people beep, we had people give us the Black Lives Matter sign. And we had, and then we had like a couple agitators, big trucks. And they just flew by. And we have children out there, and they're like flying by us. And then they do a U-turn, they do it again. And they hit the gas, so the exhaust comes out of their car and sprays all over us. We weren't hurt. I was very frustrated. Eventually the guy comes by when he sees us filming him, and he says, "Why are you filming me?" And my wife says, so we can share it and let people know in the neighborhood that this is what you're doing. And I tell the guy to get out, and he leaves. But this is where I'm going with that story. It's very common that gentleman, guy, man, whatever, in his early 20s, probably goes to like a local Southern evangelical church, and he might go maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and he probably feels very comfortable there. His white supremacy and white privilege, or the way that he treated us, is in the unsaid nuances of the message that it's okay.
Right.
And so this week, Lou Giglio came out. Okay. Have I done it now?
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Well.
Oh, my gosh. This guy has the odd. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just going to set it up because people might watch this later. He's on a stage with the CEO of Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy, and a black rap artist, Lecrae. And
his only black friend, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So he starts talking. I don't even want to try to explain it, but he says that slavery, instead of calling it white privilege to his mainly white evangelical base, he wants to call it a white blessing. And I laugh every time I hear that.
Oh, he wants to sanctify that arrogance. That's impressive.
So this is my point, and you can say whatever you want to hear, but my point is, why are we trying to soften it up? Because that is the defense I always get. Well, we need to be patient with these people.
Mm-hmm. It's this demand to be coddled.
Oh God, I hate it.
It's how dare you say I'm wrong? Because that's just, that's too confrontational. Well, the gospel itself is confrontational.
And that's what I've always heard. In anytime it was an issue that they wanted to call out, the gospel is a double-edged sword, or what, it pierces the heart and all these things.
Except for theirs.
Yes.
And here's the thing. It's like the true gospel is a call to repentance. And it's a call to be liberated from your sin, not to bathe in it, not to wallow in it, not to feel good in it. And racism is America's original sin. And to call it a blessing when it was someone else's curse, that takes a lot of audacity. A lot of audacity. And this guy has the nerve to tell people all over the world about the horrors of modern day slavery. But when it comes to black people being enslaved, for him, it was a white blessing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. During the Passion conferences, they've become very outspoken about the sex trade. Is that what you're talking about? Yes.
Oh, yeah. And labor exploitation, which is actually how I got super involved with IJM and became an advocate for International Justice Mission, and I did some advocacy work with them, and I went to their conferences, and I began to be very aware about my participation and involvement in modern day slavery, to the point that I will not buy clothes in the mall. I will not participate in sweat labor. I will not drink, buy, or any kind of thing, give away coffee that is not fair trade. Chocolate. I have gone into, because I went to Passion, I went to a chocolatier in Charlotte, in Florida. And I was like, where'd you get your chocolate from? Do you know? Because I see all your little Easter bunnies and crosses and stuff around here. Like, do you know where you got your chocolate from? I became really outspoken because of that.
When did you go to Passion?
Because I went to Passion in 2012.
In 2012? Okay, yeah. I went years ago, and so these white evangelical pastors have such huge followings. He has like 400 Instagram followers. And ironically, this, he gave an apology, and then this morning he posted something that said, I'm here to listen. But the funny thing is that he turned off the comments.
And that's what I've noticed the most, is that people are like, well, I'm just asking an innocent question. Well, you don't want my honest answer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
but you're my friend. You're supposed to be my friend. A friend listens.
There's this idea that as the white man, you have to own the conversation. And I think that's That's the part where I think the church needs to really be transformed. I wouldn't be so concerned about trying to keep your congregants and offend them if they can't see eye to eye with you on the fact that you believe that Black lives in our community do matter, Black children in our community do matter, justice matters. Like, if you can't handle that, maybe it's time for us to transform into something else. You guys can leave and go start your own church. And I mean, I don't understand.
Or your own cult.
Yes, your own cult.
Because
So.
the gospel is good news to the poor. And if your gospel is not good news to the poor, it is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And why is poor being associated with being Black? It's because to be Black is oftentimes to be poor.
Mm.
Because in our city, 18% of the population is Black, and over 40% of us live under the poverty line. That is not a coincidence.
So what's your solution? Like, how can Wilmington become, or maybe we could just discuss for a second, what is your ideal Wilmington? You drive into Wilmington, what does it look like? What does it feel like?
I wish Wilmington would be such a better place if that's a hard question to answer, because there's so many things that I would like to see change. I see what I want and how I can get there are two different things. So this is what I think we all would say that we want, but some of us want it enough to do something about it, and some of us are going to have to grow in that. But I would like to see churches not be so segregated. And I would like for them to also be honoring of everyone's culture. So some people don't have to check their culture in at the door when they show up. I would like to see true multiculturalism, where everybody's allowed to, be who they authentically are, and be loved for that. I would like to see young people mentored and cared for by older people and given a place to grow, and not be seen as a threat. I would like to see our neighborhoods integrated. I would like to see the end of classism. And we all know that there are going to be people who make more money than others, but there's a difference between some who have more than others, and the way that people are looked upon in this town, and the glass ceilings that we've placed so low over so many people's heads. I would like to see a real true evaluation of the wage gap and the wage inequality in our city. Like, if we were to take a look right now, our instructional staff at New Hanover County Schools, 5% are Black, and that includes TAs. Oh, wow. I want to know what the wage gap is there. How much have you been paying white teachers? How much have you been paying Black educators? I want to see more than entry-level jobs being given and service jobs being given to Black people, because we don't see a lot of representation in leadership. I would like to see, we should be making sure that our Black students have an opportunity to thrive and succeed. The disparities in the suspension rate are out the wazoo. You can't tell me that just because they have Black skin, just because they're poor, means that they automatically are inherently more inclined towards bad behavior. Maybe we should start treating the ACEs, the adverse child experiences. Maybe we should start making sure that they have what they need to succeed in school. Like, we need to revamp our system. Like, right now, like, I can tell you right now, in New Hanover County Schools, when the schools first closed, and they knew that there would be kids who haven't eaten since Saturday. They didn't even care. They told them, well, if they need food, they can come to the school. I'm like, yeah, with what car?
Yeah.
There's just there's a whole level of callousness towards people who are marginalized. And I would love to see that soften and disappear. And I would like to see people reinvest in places where they have divested. They'll only beautify and only invest in things that matter to them, and they don't care about poor people.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I was talking to my friend Mike on here, and I was kind of bringing up this parallel between, you drive down Martin Luther King Parkway in town, and there's a huge wall up that blocks the parkway from Creekwood, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood. In case someone's watching and they don't know, and it's a sound wall. It's not because, so I guess to keep sound from getting into the neighborhood or something. But it felt like they were trying to, and maybe they were trying to wall off, almost like, if we can just separate these people and put them in this section of town, we don't have to think about it. And then you think about the wealthiest neighborhood in town, Landfall, which is a walled
gated
neighborhood,
community.
a gated community, and it's like, we just want to stay separate from them. And I know there's wonderful people in there. I have friends, and not family, but friends, and but but that's the nonverbal message it sends. And so during the unrest recently, someone went to the Landfall wall and spray painted "I can't breathe." And I was like, oh wow, I never knew that the protesters made it this far uptown. So my question is that kind of metaphorical? I mean, is you can't keep people separated for so long and it not affect you.
Mm-hmm. So my pastor says proximity breeds empathy, and distance breeds suspicion. And I think that is very true. And I think that the way to disarm racism, and the way to begin to bridge that divide and heal these disparities, we're going to have to get a little bit closer, and we're going to have to approach one another without judgment. We can't assume just because a person has money and has a different life experiences that they're going to be a racist. Now, they might be naive to some things, but they're not necessarily racists. And they're not going to necessarily treat you poorly, and you have to give them a chance. On the other side, they're probably not trying to rob you.
Yeah.
You don't have to clutch your purse, You don't need to call the police because a Black person comes into your, Mayfair store and starts looking at expensive suits.
Yeah.
I think that people need to become aware of their implicit biases. But yeah, we have to come together. And this is one thing I do want to say too, is that, people say, well, you're being divisive because you're bringing this up. I'm like, no, the division comes with the disparities and the discrimination. And bringing them up is not divisive. It is a path to healing those things and bridging those things. Now, if you don't want to talk about it, it's because you don't want to do something about it, because the first way to address a problem is to name it and identify it. And that's what we're doing when we have these conversations. So it is not divisive to talk about it. It's actually divisive to not talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sure as an EMT, you have to get to the situation, talk about what the problem is, and discuss how we're going to move forward. But if you ignore it, of course, nothing good is going to come of it.
Yeah, I mean, I could look at somebody who's holding on the ground and say, oh, that's a shame, and walk the other way, or not try to figure out what it is. No, we're going to pull out all our tools to find out why that person's on the ground. We're going to do a patient assessment. We're going to, if the person can talk to us, we're going to ask questions. And why aren't we doing the same thing? Because there are people lying on the ground here, and we're not asking those questions.
Yeah, I would like to see that in our local churches. I'd like to see just not the conversation, but I mean, as a white evangelical, I want to be, I'm doing this podcast because I want voices that are usually not heard on a Sunday morning to be exposed. And I want to make people uncomfortable, and I want to make myself uncomfortable. Like I've always been taught that that's how you grow, is to remain uncomfortable. So it's kind of a sick obsession, you know? I mean, it's like, but that's what you do. And so much of religion and the gospel is just this returning every week and hearing the same thing that makes you feel coddled and safe and warm and doesn't require any change. So anyway, tell me about the groups that we can find you on Facebook.
I have Champions for Compassion.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Facebook group on there. We have community conversations, which is usually like most of the conversations about race. And right now, I have a special project called Cover Our Peeps, and we're getting masks to people who have pre-existing conditions. They're elderly, essential workers, and people who ride public transportation. So Cover Our Peeps, PEEPS, Champions for Compassion, and Community Conversations. I have a Patreon account that I'm going to get set up one of these days so I can like write more. People can watch.
Yeah, do that.
But, you know, I really wanted to speak a little bit to what you were just saying about, you know, like the white evangelicals. And I think the message is God loves you as much as he loves me, and he loves me as much as he loves you. And, you know, God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It's the whole world. And all of us have his fingerprints on us. All of us have, we're all made in his image. And that has to really permeate our worldview. And Yeshua of Nazareth was a revolutionary. And because of his 3.5 years of ministry on this earth, he has changed the world. And if things aren't changing around us and he lives within us, supposedly, then something's wrong. And we should be on the front lines of this. We should be the front lines saying that, you know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to release those who are in captivity, to bring good news to the poor, the recovery of sight to the blind. And I think we have a lot of blindness. And some of that is intentional, and some of that is just like, you know, maybe unintentional. But right now, if you're hearing, if you're seeing what's happening, this is a wake-up call. It is a wake-up call to see that we have a country that's in crisis, and we should be praying for our country. And we should be, yeah. Sorry,
there's a delay. Can you respond to this? You're not looking for big government to fix all these problems.
No.
Okay, because I think that's usually, I think that a lot of times that's where people go. It's like, yeah, you're calling this out. You just want government and all the correct laws in place. You want to change hearts, which is what I think is so beautiful about what you do and who you are, because you aren't looking for, I mean, yes, you want to be heard at the city council and in the local and politically, you want equality on the number of fronts, but you also care deeply about unity and hearts.
Well, here's the thing. It's like the government, like, you know, people can become woke by becoming intellectually enlightened and emotionally connected. But with our message and our mission and with the power of God, we can even go beyond woke. We can have a great awakening.
Cool. Yeah.
And that is what the world is really waiting for. They are waiting for that breath of fresh air that comes from the Spirit of God. And that is something that we could absolutely do. We should be leading this fight, but unfortunately, we're not. As a matter of fact, the church has been so slow in stepping up to this plate that we have actually discredited our witness to the gospel. We have discredited our witness to Imago Dei. And that's what we have to see our opportunity. And yes, the government is going to do their best, our best, because we're all Americans. We the people have a responsibility in our politics. but they can only go but so far, and they will begin to, because things are changing, they're going to do their best to make legislation happen. They're going to do their best, I believe, I hope, to begin to challenge structures.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that the best change could come from the heart. But I think at this point, we might not be able to wait for that. And there's going to be a lot of mad people out there. But I mean,
yeah,
it is our job. It's our job. And if the government's doing it, it's because we haven't done ours.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, Brooke C. Cavey said, the only time the church is transformed in history is when society became more secular, and said, you can't get away with that. And it made the church change in so many ways. I would love if the church was the forefront of some of these issues. Like every October we have an anti-choice, anti-abortion, whatever you want to call it, rally or pro-life, whatever you want to call it, in Wilmington. And there's like hundreds of people lining the main streets with, signs about abortion and things. And, but can you imagine if the church, if and as you drive through it, you're like, whatever, or at least I am personally. I'm just like, okay, I've seen this so many times. Can you imagine if it was like, oh my God, I wish the church would shut up about racial equality. I wish they would quit. I wish they would stop talking about fair wages for people of color. Like, I mean, can you just imagine if they were known as like the most progressive in some ways?
Mm-hmm. Or if they were actually known for the gospel of the Bible.
That's beautiful.
Because he came to, can you imagine Black people being treated in heaven the way they're being treated here? No, absolutely not. I feel like in some ways the church has woken up a little bit this time, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that right now I have seen white evangelical pastors speak out on racism in ways that I haven't seen happen before. And I absolutely welcome that. And I've seen people begin to have conversations and begin to consider, wow, we might have gotten that wrong and we need to catch up. And I'm very excited about that. And I'm very hopeful about that. And I do think that there are going to be some apologies made. I think that, at some point the Catholic Church recognized that Inquisition was kind of messed up, and I think that at some point that white evangelicalism is going to have a day of reckoning. And I think that day is very soon. If it hasn't already begun.
Yeah, I pray so. I hope so. I just want to see, I think myself, along with a lot of other people, you just want to see transparency and authenticity and honesty and brokenness. And like we can all, it's so funny that like you can take people with different belief systems and different walks of life, and they'll come together a lot of times on these ideas of humility and authenticity and being honest and laying down your power and powerlessness. And it's like this common denominator that we all share. It's like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And people just want to hear that. They just want to hear, I was wrong. We've ignored this issue. We've actually encouraged white supremacy by not discouraging white supremacy. It's always, we always put it off for another week. We never spoke out about the killings of these people. We just ignored them and we called them political because we didn't see it as a human issue. We saw it as a political issue, and that's what we called it. And I think in that moment there's a relinquishing of power to even control that message anymore, or even to control yourself and your congregation. And I just don't know. It'll honestly take a move of God, like a miracle itself in some of these.
A great awakening.
A great awakening. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. And I pray it happens. I really do. That's one thing that kind of really keeps my feet in some degree of faith, is like this hope and this prayer and this belief that, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And when I see those protests, I think of a holy roar. Like, and
Yes.
it's funny because for years, like in church, like we would pray, like as a teenager, like a holy roar. And that was actually one of the original Passion songs or something,
Yes, it
a holy
was.
roar. And it's like, when you see these protests, it's like, that's the holy roar that we were praying
Yes.
for, but it's not all white and it's not all,
And that's the thing, is that, like, I think that, I mean, I had to deconstruct a lot
Mm-hmm.
of what I grew up with.
Yeah.
And I have come to a firm belief that righteousness and justice are the foundations of his throne, and that mercy never comes at the expense of justice, because he is equally both. And that's what love is. And so we have to have justice. And if we have justice, there will be nothing missing and nothing broken. And that is shalom. You cannot have peace when you have discrimination and disparities. You cannot have peace with nothing missing and nothing broken when we are missing people and our hearts are broken because there are Black bodies laying in the street with impunity for those who do that. We are a broken culture. And God draws near to those who have a broken and contrite heart. And contrite meaning sorry, repentant. And maybe he hasn't drawn near because half of us, we're not contrite enough. There are those of us who are truly broken and contrite, but some of us are not. We're still asking, well, what did he do? That's not contrite.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully in this moment, there is a moment of contrition where we really are saying, this is not okay, and we want better. We want better than this. And it might require a great amount of change, but don't be afraid of the change, because God is in it. Like, this whole world came to a stop, like, in a way, for a little while with the pandemic. It was like God was saying, stop. We had opportunity reset. We have had this massive explosion of awareness of violence against Black people, and it's still happening. I believe that this is our time to stop, reevaluate, stop making the same mistakes. Why is it so important? Why is it so afraid, fearful? Why is it so scary to say, this isn't okay, let's change this now? No, we can talk about it next year at the next year's budget. Really?
Yeah.
After it costs what? At what cost? What will waiting cost us? Well, maybe it doesn't cost you anything you care about, but it might cost another man his life.
Yeah. And that's where the frustration for me is anytime you're talking about some of these issues that can be a little divisive or whatever, of course not
confrontational or controversial.
Yes. Thank you. Anytime you want to talk about these, they say, well, I see the church has progressed so much in the last 10 years. I see in 10 to 20 years, this really becoming a thing. And they're treating it as if there's not human lives that are paying the price in the meantime.
Yes. Absolutely.
Whenever we had a hurricane locally, so many churches, you are on the scene. We got Samaritan's Purse here, which is a whole other podcast. We've got all these people here ready to help. We got volunteers. It doesn't matter what we believe about the hurricane. The hurricane has happened and we are going to fix it. And it's beautiful. It's great. I love to see the community come together after hurricanes. You talk to neighbors you've never talked to. You do things you've never done. I just met random people. But if it's something, if it's about Black lives, well, we are looking at this theologically, and that's something we're going to start confronting. And so
in 50 years,
yeah. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much. I don't want to make it resolved because that fixes it. So I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you for being with me. On Facebook, Rebecca Trammel, Champions for Compassion. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm Rebecca Trammel on Facebook, and Champions for Compassion, Cover Our Peeps, and Community Conversations NHCS.
Beautiful. Thank you for being with me.
I
knew it was going to be fun.
Always. I love talking to you, Kevin.